Electronic shifting has become all the rage, which may make our advice here sound a little behind the times, but hey, we like to cover all the bases on the show, and that's why we want to remind you to change those shifting cables before the week of the Trail 100.
Unless you're racing single speed, of course, right?
Unless, yes.
Nevertheless, Hottie, I am listening because my Shimano shifting is, of course, mechanical. That's a 1x bike, and Lisa, also another 1x. Electronic shifting is great. I have used it at the Leadville Trail 100. It was Shimano Di2 XTR in a 2x configuration, but my current geared bike is a 1x, and it is mechanically actuated. In other words, cables.
Right. Now, we're not going to tell you to change group sets, even if you are not running Shimano. We'll take that up at a later date. But no matter what group set you're running, if it is mechanical, then please make sure your cable and housing or cables and housing for the 2x riders is or are fresh. I have seen it at the Trail 100, a rider pulling into the feed with a broken shift cable. That will almost certainly end your day.
Yeah, it is hard to recover from that. So we are going to point you to the Shimano website and the mountain bike parts section. On that page, you will find 3 levels of replacement housing and cables. All of them are great. The higher end stuff, called Advanced, has a better coating on that cable that will put up with the dirt and the grime that you can expect a little bit better. If you can't find that, though, just keep on moving through the category till you get to something that says Shimano and MTB on the package.
Exactly. The good news about these Shimano cable replacement kits is they all come with Shimano's SP41 housing. It is excellent stuff that makes for easy routing and smooth shifting. I'll tell you, I've put Shimano cables and housing on both Shimano-equipped bikes and none, and the stuff just works and lasts. So don't skimp here and cut off a problem before it happens by freshening up your cable or cables and housing.
And thanks as always to Shimano, that's bike.shimano.com, for being the title sponsor of this show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Shimano. Find them at bike.shimano.com. It is Season 5, Episode 20 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, freaks you out for the highest, hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I'm Michael Houghton, hottie to most.
And I am Fatty, and we have a lot to talk about in this episode, starting, of course, with the course. A couple of episodes ago, we left you kind of hanging halfway up the Powerline Climb. Sorry about that. That was mean. But we're going to get moving again here, although moving will be on the slow side because this pitch is steep and it's rocky, and will also take you down the other side until we get to Hagerman.
Sugarloaf Descent, the ultimate tricep test. And since we are so close to race day, we have called back Cody Waite, who will outline our taper so we are fresh for that start line.
But before we get to all of that, let's talk about the Leadville Podcast group ride. If you're listening and you're going to be in Leadville, we want you there.
Yeah, and this part is new. We want you to register for our ride. Don't worry, this won't cost you anything, but we want to know how many folks are going to be there so we know how much product our friends at the feed should bring to hand out.
Yeah, it'll only take a minute, and you'll go to a link that we have been saying literally, Hottie, for years. I think we're close to 5 years now. Every episode of this show, we say, go to thefeed.com/Leadville.
And from there, you fill out your name, email, and get this, your hoped for finish time.
Yeah, why do they need to do that?
Well, that's where this gets good, Fatty. The first 100 people who sign up will have their own custom bottle waiting for them at this event provided by the feed with their name and target time right on there.
Are we seriously giving these out for free?
Yeah, free. Absolutely free. Just for the first 100 people, though, who register. And at least twice that many people came last year. So obviously, it's not a great idea to wait to sign up for this thing, especially since it only takes a moment.
Exactly. So again, thefeed.com/Leadville. And here are some details on the ride itself. It's Thursday morning, August 11th, 9 a.m. We will meet at the Ice Palace Park in Leadville. We'll saddle up, we'll ride out of town, partway up Keevens, just the first mile of it or so, and there's that sharp left turn. We'll stop, catch our breath, and then turn around and return to town via the boulevard. We'll come back to the Ice Palace Park, and then we're going to, and I should point this out, we're going to be trying to do this at a conversational pace, except for when I am going up Keevens on my single speed, at which point I will be unable to converse. It is a known fact. Apologies in advance for that.
The one time we get silence from Fatty. Well, it might be an opportunity then. When you're back, the feed will be on hand with some thank yous for supporting the show, and we'll bring some cool socks, t-shirts, and more from DNA for a few lucky folks as well.
Yep. And Coach Cody Waite will be there. Rising star pro racer Melissa Rollins will be there, or she will not be allowed back in the Airbnb that her mother and I have rented. Pete Stetina should be there. Jeremiah Bishop will be there, and more.
So mark your calendars for Thursday, August 11th, 9 a.m. and Google Ice Palace Park, Leadville for the location, and go to register now at thefeed.com/Leadville.
Yeah. One final important note, like everywhere in Leadville, parking is practically impossible to find. Don't even try. Ride your bike to the park and we'll see you there.
So we have talked a bunch about your Leadville race kit, right? Wearing a bright colored DNA top, those DNA Endurance gravel bibs with the side panel mesh pockets, maybe some arm warmers, a vest for the cold descent out of town. But Fatty, I checked our records, and best I can tell, we have never talked about base layers.
No, that is a mistake. The all-important base layer. I wear one because it can help with the morning chill, and it keeps the jersey from, sticking to your skin, that kind of adhesion feel that you get with a hot jersey sticking to your skin.
At Leadville, I always wore one too. Well, if your base layers are starting to look and feel a little ragged, then head over to the DNA accessories page and check out what they have.
Okay, I'm going to do that right now. DNAcycling.com. Okay, at the store, I'm clicking on accessories. Yep, sleeveless base layer. Perfect, just how I like them. Okay, so it says sleeveless base layer offers a honeycomb pattern, which allows airflow to move between your skin, base layer, and jersey. Your core stays cool and dry, so you can focus on cranking out the miles in warm or cold weather. Sold.
Right. I think that honeycomb thing is just like you're talking about there, Fatty. It prevents the jersey, your outer layer, from sticking to your skin directly. And the base layer not only keeps that chill away, but also prevents that uncomfortable feeling. Right. And if you keep scrolling on that page, you will see one with a very cool pattern that may give you a little inspiration as you ride past the fish hatchery. It's called the Catch and Release Base Layer from DNA Cycling. It's part of their art collection, complete with dazzling array of fish over the chest and back. You'll look really cool. That is, at least if your jersey zipped open. And whether you like some design on your first layer or not, DNA has got you covered. Check out the fresh base layers at DNAcycling.com. And while you're at it, take a once around their custom department and consider working up a future kit.
Every part of this course kicks you in the teeth.
This is the course. We are talking you through what you need to do to have the very best possible day, the second Saturday in August, from the shotgun blast to the moment you roll up the red carpet. And of course, that 105 miles in between.
Yeah, this is Powerline Part 2. The climb's so nice, we broke it in two. Look, the walking is done, and now we're going to try and ride. And this really is one of those make or break spots on the course, this upper section of Powerline. And then after we get through that, we'll take you over the top and get you off this damn thing.
That's right. Get off this mountain. You are now into the last fifth of the race, but man, what a fifth. This is not an easy part. So let's talk about the numbers here. First, we're on the second half of the Powerline climb, so the math is finally on your side. So going back to the first couple miles of the Powerline, you've netted 1,000 feet. You've gone from 9,700 feet to 10,700 feet, and it is actually more climbing than that. It's not just 1,000 feet that you've climbed, because you remember in that first half, there is a little descent, and then you have to make up that altitude. So really, in 2 miles, you've climbed about 1,200 feet.
Yeah, and the second half of Powerline, and I kind of find this almost hard to believe, you net 400 feet of climbing, about a third as much climbing as in the second half as in the first. Of course, you're climbing from 10,700 to 11,000 feet, so it's not going to feel easy, and that's probably why 400 feet, you're kind of like, what? Any veteran who's been there before goes, what? It's only 400 feet, but it's not as much as you might think. You have done the hard part.
However, there is more technical climbing. Maybe that's why it feels hard, Hottie. You wouldn't think of it as highly technical normally when your legs are fresh, but it feels technical now. You have to spike your energy to get up over those roots or to get up over that one rock. Momentum is not something that you really build in this part of the race.
Yeah, there's a lot of back tire slippage going on in parts of this course. That's probably another reason why that 400 feet feels like 4,000. So there's that too, but there should be always at least a good line. And by the time you get to race day, you're guaranteed that many people have discovered that line and hopefully established it somehow with tire tracks. Follow that prominent line and you'll rarely go wrong.
And on that note, actually, Hottie, some more good news. We told you that the power line is 4 miles long, and that is true. But the final half mile or so of that is a pretty gentle grade, and it's going to feel, honestly, it feels flat, if you remember, relative to what you've been riding for the last 3.5 miles. It is going to be your first good one-handed riding opportunity since you got off the pavement before the Powerline Climb, which means, you guessed it, it is a great opportunity to eat and drink something.
Mm-hmm. To eat and drink, our ongoing theme here in the course. Look for every opportunity to do that. Powerline is now essentially behind you. You are 84.5 miles into this race, and if you're feeling lightheaded, well, that is because you are once again above 11,000 feet, right at 11,000 to be more exact, and you have 20 miles to go.
Yep. And another piece of good news, I'm not sure if 11,100 feet is good news, but let's treat it like that. Of the final 20 miles in this race, the next 5, so a quarter of what you have left, is going to be all downhill. You are about to drop over 1,000 feet in the next 5 miles.
Mm-hmm. So some fun question mark ahead of you? Yeah, maybe. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. So the downhill doesn't necessarily always mean easy riding. You're at the top of the Sugarloaf now, and Sugarloaf is as rocky and as techy as it gets at Leadville.
Yeah. And you and I have talked about this before, Hottie. We both love Sugarloaf. We like it going up. We like it going down. But when you have 85 miles of racing in your legs and your braking fingers are exhausted, I have actually had cramps in my index fingers from all the braking in Leadville. You are exhausted, and something that is normally fun can be really difficult. So a little bit of advice here.
So let's start with your approach to the section. You'll remember it from going up. It is, rocky. Water generally pours down this section of the Sugarloaf during the spring runoff. And so you have a lot of exposed rock here, which means you're in for a rough ride. You have 2 approaches. If you're a great descender and you are feeling good, yeah, you can be somewhat aggressive here. The rocks are, there's flat potential, and there always is, and you could pinch flat through here. But I think the idea for most folks here, Fatty, is to keep it conservative. You've made it this far, don't blow it on this section.
Yeah, you don't want to crash out in the final 20 miles of the race. Also, I would say stay loose, right? For me, at least, when I am tired, I tighten up. I stop really flowing in the descents. You have to remind yourself, make a mental note. Stay loose on the downhills. Let your legs be your best suspension. Let your elbows be great suspension. Don't let yourself tighten up. Absorb those bumps and rocks and roots as you ride.
Yeah, like our friend Lee McCormack, the skills trainer, tells us, light hands, heavy feet, especially through a section like this. And then watch your line. There's generally a best line. Again, a lot of spring runoff here. Choose the line. Also, riders have been through this section before, so finding a good line, finding the best line, unless you are salty sweat in your eyes and can't see in front of you, you should be able to see, the best line. Just use it by all means.
That's right. Remember, there have been people who have been riding this section of the course and every section of the course, the entire summer. There has been the camp. All those folks have been riding this section of the course. People have been practicing on it. And of course, there was the stage race that happened just a couple of weeks ago. Unless there has been a lot of rain recently, the best line will be thoroughly burned in. You'll be able to see it. And then finally, remember, it is just 1 mile. I couldn't believe this when I was doing the math on a hottie. It feels like more than a mile going down Sugarloaf. But from the summit of Powerline to when you make that hard right angle, right where the course marshal is directing you, it is just a mile. Just a mile. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I can, because, it's pretty slow going up, and then, you got a fairly quick coming down. I would say, the toughest section on your body, at least, is that lower section. So as you approach, and you'll recognize it, it's the straight section. As you approach that straight section, just really watch it in there. You can let the bike just fly through it and try to bounce off the top of all those rocks, but it is very rough right at the bottom section. And once you reach the bottom, again, you're going to make a right-hand turn. There's going to be a marshal there. There's probably going to be those pink ribbons there sitting there. Don't go left. What if you do not go left on Hagerman? Because you'll probably end up way out on the Colorado Trail or someplace bizarre. You want to go right. As you reach Hagerman, you'll be back on that washboard road.
Mm-hmm. And that is an acute angle. So, really a hairpin turn that you're going to be making there. So, you've done the mile of Sugarloaf. You still got 4 miles of descending to do before you start climbing again. And you've got 19 miles left in the race, and we're going to get to all of that, well, most of it, from here to the Carter's Aid Station in the next installment of the course.
There are many things to love about Envy: their attention to detail, their quality over quantity mantra, the sexiness of the brand. And I'd like to add another. They are not stuck to one way of making things. Now, Envy is first and foremost a carbon wheel and component company, but they are not afraid to acknowledge when carbon is not the best choice.
Yeah, that's right. They spent months working on this new dropper post that they've recently released, and a considerable amount of time prototyping carbon versions. But in the end, Envy decided that aluminum was the better way to go. And so that is what we have in the new G-Series dropper. Also, the Envy mountain stem, it could have been a stubby piece of carbon, but Envy thought for the rough and tumble world of enduro and downhill, or even good old trail riding, aluminum would be the better option. The mountain alloy stem is cold forged and machined for lower weight and strength. Notice we didn't say lowest weight, and neither does Envy. A carbon mountain stem would weigh less, but Envy knows that weight is not the only factor in both stems and droppers, and that's why it diverted from its roots in developing those products. That's right, Hottie, and of course you can learn about all of Envy's alloy components, as well as its full carbon lineup at Envy, that's ENVE.com.
Hi, I'm Cody Waite with Waite Endurance. We're going to be demonstrating the aerobic strength intervals. 3, 2, 1, start. Crank it really hard for the first 5-10 seconds.
Coach Cody, welcome back. Excited to talk with you about tapering. I feel like this is what I am really good at. That is not doing stuff.
Yes, good to be back. We're getting so close now to event day, and this is a tricky topic, I think, for a lot of people.
It is. By my nature, the fact that we are all drawn to races means that we are go type personalities, right? Actually, pumping the brakes is counter to everything that we have done to get us to this point. And frankly, it freaks me out a little bit to slow down and take it easy. So put my mind at ease and tell me what I need to be doing.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go through this. This is a favorite topic of mine. I feel like I've, over the years, done a pretty good job of figuring out how to do this correctly for the majority of people. But yeah, at this point of the season, we're as this recording is, about 3 weeks to go to the race. And the last recording you had me on, we talked about building big fitness. So hopefully that's step one, right? Like that, hopefully all our listeners have done that. You've put in the big miles, you've gotten all your intervals in, you've done everything to the best of your ability up to this point. Now, likely you're reaching a point of being quite tired because, the more you train, the more fatigue accumulates as well. It's not like we can just train, and then the next day go race because you're going to be tired after all of the training. So fitness is really high, but freshness is usually quite low at this point. You've probably reached the highest CTL, or the highest points, of your fitness in your training log of the whole entire season. And now we need to, along with that high fitness, high fatigue, and your readiness to perform is rather low. So we need to kind of get those numbers up, get those feelings up, where you're ready to really grip it and rip it on race day and, be able to make the most of all this hard work you've done at this point. So that's what, people mean when it's taper time. It's time to pull everything in. I mean, the classic cliche is the hay is in the barn, meaning all the work is done. And I tell all my athletes, once we're inside 2 weeks to go of race day, there's really no training you can do that's going to make you more fit or better prepared for racing. It has to be done before that 2 week window.
But there are things that you can do that will completely ruin you for a race day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the classic one is, a week out or 10 days out, someone's like, I'll fit in this one last killer ride or, killer workout session that's going to really like put the icing on the cake. But the problem is once you're, inside 2 weeks, any big training in particular, it's just going to dig that hole of fatigue and delay bringing up the freshness or the readiness to perform. And it's all about timing of getting, losing the least amount of fitness while gaining the most amount of freshness for race day. And that's where it's so tricky, is getting that timing right because if you just pull the plug and you rest for a whole week, you're going to lose lots of fitness. You'll probably get pretty fresh, but you'll also probably get a little flat feeling. Usually anyone who trains regularly and you take a few days off, usually that day coming back to training, you don't feel so great. So that's why it's important to continue to train, but just at a lower volume level and perhaps slightly less intensity than what you've been accustomed to in the weeks leading up to it.
Race day is the second Saturday in August 13th this year. So roll back our calendar for us, Cody. When does this taper start?
Tapering, I mean, it's as much as an art as it is a science. A taper can be 1 week, as short as 1 week, as long as maybe 3 weeks. I've really settled in on thinking 2 weeks works for 90+% of the athletes out there. So with 2 weeks to go, that's when you start tapering. So really that last weekend, 3 weekends before race day is kind of when you're going to do that, maybe that last really big ride, that last aerobic interval session, maybe like we talked about in the last episode you had me on. That's it. Then the hay is in the barn, as we've said, and now we're going to start that taper with 2 weeks to go. And like we already said, a lot of people struggle with this concept of like 2 weeks. If I back it off, I'm going to lose fitness. And to some degree, in all reality, you do lose some fitness, but let's put a different spin or perspective on it. Don't think of it as losing fitness. Think of it as trading a small amount of fitness for a lot of freshness and a lot of race readiness. And maybe that'll help put one's mind at a little more of an ease, perhaps.
I have done a taper where I structured it this way, Cody, where I treated race week, in other words, those 5 days leading up to August 13th, as its own separate week and had its own separate idea about what to do during that week. And then done 2 weeks prior to that, prior to race week. So this is actually a 3 week taper where you gradually back off the training for 2 weeks, and then get to race week, and then kind of run out a plan that way. Have you ever messed around with something like that?
Somewhat. I mean, basically a longer taper, like a 3 week long.
Yeah, it's basically a longer taper. Although race week, what happens to it is you do 2 weeks of a taper where you're gradually backing off your intensity and your duration. Mm-hmm. And then you get to race week, and you actually kick up, you actually add a few more intervals back in, usually some speed type work, nothing really long or hard, nothing really LT or sweet spot, nothing like that, but some sprints or some quick stuff in that race week, and then hit race day and go for it.
Yeah, I have done some things like that actually back in my road racing days. Road racing's, because you typically, if you're a road racer, you race quite frequently, and road racing is very highly dynamic, let's say, meaning like sometimes it's relatively easy and then sometimes it's extremely hard and kind of on and off, and you got to respond to surges and attacks. So that can be a worthwhile strategy, doing some work the week of a race. So you're ready, your legs are fresh and ready to respond to attacks and things. But I think an event like Leadville, being that I think of it more as a time trial, like a big group time trial, where we're all sort of racing ourselves and the course and trying to get kind of our best time, perhaps, as opposed to racing the field, unless you're, one of the top elites, trying to win the thing. So it becomes more of a steady effort. So I find that like a 2-week taper, and we'll dive into like more of the specifics, because we definitely maintain some intensity across the 2 weeks for sure. And gradually reducing things will have a rider like really fresh and ready to go for that long haul on Leadville.
And I want to drive this point home one more time, Cody, regarding the calendar. So 2 weeks from this year's race date, folks, is July 30th.
Okay.
So, Cody, you're saying July 30th is the first day of your taper. And what happens on July 30th? What kind of ride am I doing on July 30th? Because I think the urge would be, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm 2 weeks out, but I got one more. I can go out and get one more long ride.
Right.
Is that the drop dead date for tapering, July 30th?
Yes. So is July 30th a Monday?
No, July 30th is a Saturday.
Saturday. Okay, so that's Leadville stage race.
That is the second day of the stage race. Yes.
Yeah. So that weekend is your last big weekend. So if you're doing the stage race, that's a big weekend, right? If you're not doing the stage race, that's like your final aerobic threshold workout probably on Saturday, and your last big, 6-hour plus ride on Sunday.
So that weekend of July 30th, you're free to keep riding hard and doing your thing. And that Monday, then we start to back things off.
Exactly. I find that works really well for a lot of people.
Okay.
And then Monday is typically a rest day, starting taper.
Right. And that's August 1st, by the way. Monday, August 1st is when you should start peeling through, turning down the dial here.
Exactly. So let's talk about how we do that. So to taper, there's a lot of science around it. A lot of studies have been done. I've said this before. I think tapering is a bit more of an art rather than a science. But in general, I'll agree with most of the science. And it's basically you're in a nutshell, decreasing your training load across this time span, this 2-week time span. Most of that should be done in terms of volume. So we're done with long rides. You're going to cut your volume. This is where the scientific studies have different amounts, but roughly in half, let's say, of what your bigger training week has been. So if you finished like that last week, 3 weeks before the race, and you ended up doing, let's say, a 15-hour training week, then that first taper week might be somewhere to the tune of like 8 or 9 hours. So about 40% less, give or take. And then the second week, which would be race week, you're going to cut that volume again. And then maybe now we're down into not including the race, but prior to the race, you might only ride 4 or 5 hours that week, Monday through Friday, as that shorter week. Now, you're also going to lessen the amount of intensity you do, but we're going to keep the same levels of intensity in the mix. And that's really critical, because very similar to if we just took a week off and then we feel kind of flat coming back. If you take a week of just all easy riding and then you start, try to step on the gas and put some power out, you're probably going to feel a little bit flat. So we really want to I like to do 2 what I call race prep workouts per week. So 2 in the first week of the taper, 2 in the second week of the taper, that are maintaining some high intensity in the training program. And we can talk specifically about that if you'd like to as well.
Oh yeah, for sure I would like. You're about to describe my life, so please do go into detail.
Okay. So, when tapering, you want to keep the intensity in your weekly program. the cliche I use is, these intensity workouts are to sharpen the sword, right? We've forged this sword over the hot coals or the hot fire, for weeks and weeks and weeks, right? Now we're going to sharpen it in these, tapering weeks. So we're ready to go to battle on race day. So in my training, and I think in most people's training, we train by energy systems. We train by specific zones, whether it be heart rate zones, power zones, the various intervals and things to build our fitness. I like to maintain that same aspect to these, what I call race prep workouts. So we do the same levels of intensity, but just smaller amounts of them and shorter durations of them. So in my training program, and we talked about this the last time you had me on, if you're doing an anaerobic threshold interval, the 4 by 8 minutes at one's 32-minute power, which is about 106-7% of FTP, we're still going to hit the 32-minute power or that anaerobic threshold level in our tapering weeks. But instead of doing 8-minute long intervals, we're just going to shorten that down to a couple, up to 4, depending on the person, 4-minute long intervals. So much shorter durations, but still the same intensity, just a shorter duration, and less of it across the workout. And then the other trick to this tapering is when you're the first race prep workout that would maybe come, depends on what you've done on your final big week. So if someone did the Leadville stage race, for example, you're going to need a few days to recover from that before you do a race prep workout. But if it was maybe a normal training week and you did a big ride on Saturday and, you recovered on Monday, maybe you'd be ready by Tuesday for this first race prep workout. And this could be a big one. So up to maybe a 2.5 hour long ride. And you're going to do 4 intervals of each of the energy systems or power zones that we like to target in our training and across this workout. So you're going to do 4 by 4 minutes at 32-minute power, like the example I used before. And then you're going to work to 4 by 2 minutes at 16-minute power. So that's getting into VO2. And then some 4 by 1s, and then some 4 by 30 seconds, 4 by 15 seconds. So it's a decent workout. It's actually a rather challenging workout. But it's much less intensity than maybe what you've done in your training building up to this. So it's very much doable and you're extremely fit at this point. Then later on in the week, you're going to do your second race prep workout, which I call the 3 by, meaning you're going to do now 3 intervals of each of those durations and power levels. And this might be, if you did the first one on a Tuesday, this one might be on a Friday, would be a good example. Then as we get into race week, you're going to do a 2 by race prep workout. So you're just going to do 2 of each of those. So 4 by 2 minutes, 2 by 4 minutes, and then 2 by 2 minutes, and so on, hitting each of those energy systems. And that might be Tuesday of race week. And then the last workout, which I usually have fall the day before the race, so that would be Friday. You're going to just do 1 of each of those intervals to get ready for racing. So typically you will take the day off, 2 days before the race, completely off. That's when you go get your packet and lay low as much as you can, get your bike all prepped up. And then the day before the race, you do this 1 by workout where you just hit each energy system for a short duration, once each. In the cross country world or the cyclocross world, these workouts are called opener workouts, where you just hit a little bit of intensity to wake up the legs and get them primed for race day. So that's like the basic progression. And then across the rest of those 2 weeks, all your rides are pretty much easy rides, zone 1, active recovery, and getting gradually shorter as well. So the first week you might do a 2-hour, easy ride. And then the week of the race, those rides might be, just a quick hour each or something. So you've gradually reduced volume. You've held on to the intensity levels, but you've reduced the amount of the intensity levels. And therefore you show up on race day, with that sword sharpened and ready to attack the race.
Yeah, the idea, I guess, is to keep these energy systems reminded that, hey, we'll be needing you.
Exactly.
Don't go away.
Exactly. Yep, you're keeping them primed, for sure. That's the exact point of it. You're doing just enough to stimulate everything, all the muscles and, everything in there, but little enough that it's reducing the amount of fatigue you're accumulating. You're actually getting more rested as the 2 weeks go by. And then you start to really feel that work you've done show up, because you're starting to really feel good. Like you want to go harder and you want to go longer. And those race prep intervals actually become really easy because they're so short relative to the power. And then, okay, I am like, you're the wild stallion being held back to take off when the gun goes off. So
now every year when I get to Leadville and, I get there with a little bit of time to taper and to recover and to be ready for the race, at some point I get this antsiness that I want to go. And I'm like, you know what? Just to make sure that I'm good, I'm going to go climb Columbine. I do. I mean, every single time. The first year I raced Leadville.
And I have a feeling you'll see other people out there.
Oh, yeah. Every year I see people out there. The first year we did this podcast, we brought a group up. Was it Friday? Was it the day before the race?
No. It was Wednesday or Tuesday. Yeah,
2 days?
We were sensible.
Okay.
It was pretty close before the race, though, and we climbed Columbine. I apologize to everyone who listens to this show. I can't help myself. I brought you in to my head. But there is the tendency for a lot of us racers to want to go and climb Keevens or climb Sugarloaf or climb Columbine just to see, climb the Powerline, just to make sure that somehow our fitness hasn't evaporated.
Right.
What do we do? I mean, what is your advice to people like me?
So definitely do not do any long or hard sustained efforts in those 2 weeks going into the race, for sure. And especially if you're coming from low elevation and you're coming up, a week or two before the race to adapt to elevation, you definitely don't want to do any more work than what's necessary. Now, that said, if you happen to be there ahead of time, you can do these workouts on the course. Like go ride some of the course. Just don't go crazy, right? Like if you may not make it to the top of Columbine in those, race prep workouts, but you could, on a longer one, maybe get halfway up or something like that. You could definitely do them up. Keevens or Keevens is a good one. Hagerman's is a good one. Yeah. Powerline's a little steep in my opinion, but each to their own. I mean, we're all adults here and we can decide what to do. But I would avoid Powerline the inside 2 weeks of the race. But yeah, I mean, and there's tons of value to seeing segments of the course. So I highly recommend like going out and riding as much of the course as you can within reason of not creating more fatigue, and doing these workouts. And then those easier rides, those 2-hour aerobic rides that make up the rest of the week on say 2 weeks out from the race, go ride, but be diligent and make yourself pedal up the hills in your smallest gear that you have, like as slow as you possibly can. You still get to see the course, and you're getting your aerobic work without overly extending yourself. But it's definitely tricky because you're going to be feeling really good, really itching to race, like, and who doesn't get excited when you're out there riding, pre-riding segments of the course and you start thinking about it and, you envision your competitors around you and how you're going to do everything. So you have to be really, able to withhold those urges to do too much for sure.
I'll never forget it, Fatty. I was down at the bottom of Keevens one year, and here comes our buddy Nate Whitman. You remember Nate?
I know Nate, yeah.
And Nate Whitman. It was, I think, the day before the race, and he was there on Keevens doing openers. And they were going hard. They were zipping like right away, but they backed off too quite quickly. And they turned around, and I believe they drove back to town. Like they loaded the bikes back up in the car and drive back to town.
Yeah,
that's what racers do.
Right, that sounds about right. Yep.
Yeah, the rest of us ride, but racers, and if your idea is to race, then what Cody's talking about here is a race plan for fitness. Mm-hmm. If you want to go out and look at the course, terrific. Go up Columbine. Go up Columbine on Wednesday and look around, but you just can't expect to get those final knife sharpening touches that Cody's talking about.
Exactly.
So Cody, we're now, let's say, a couple days away from the race. The desire to go out and do what I tend to do is almost irresistible. What should we be doing instead?
Okay, great question. So 2 days out, so this would be Thursday before the race. Mm-hmm. This is the ideal day to get your bike the final details of your bike situated. Definitely wash it. That's first and foremost. If get the chain lubed. It's not the time necessarily to like change a chain or a tire. You should hopefully have done that maybe the week prior, and kind of given those things time to break in. But just that final, really detailed, pretend like you're going to go, try to sell your bike the next day, like that kind of cleaning, like super detailed, right? And I mean, this may sound cheesy, but then you kind of become one with your bike. You build this special bond, right? And because you're about to ask your bike and yourself, right, for a huge effort in 2 days. So, really get in there and clean her up. Go to the expo. Don't spend tons of time there, but get your packet. Say hi to the few people that you really feel like you need to say hi to, but don't. It's usually hot and sunny those days, and the expo's gotten bigger and bigger, it seems, every year, and lots of cool stuff to look at. But keep in mind that stuff will be there after the race too. So, or if you can go earlier in the week, perhaps, and really hang around. But don't dilly dally. Get that done, and then get back to your condo or your RV or your hotel or wherever it is you are, and relax and put your feet up. It's a good day to pull up Netflix and watch some movies and think about eating the best foods that you can, maximizing carbohydrates, all that sort of thing. 2 days out. Does that sound about right?
I love putting my feet up, hanging out, doing nothing,
and then,
which is what I'm going to do on race day too. No, I'll be working actually for Fatty, but that's a good plan for me.
Yeah, it can feel. It can definitely feel weird. Like I can speak for myself. Like I rarely give myself time in my regular week to like just sit and do nothing, because there's, whether it be riding or, just work to do or house chores or whatever. It's like, it's not my personality, but you have to I have to force myself to like sit down or lay down in the bed and watch a movie or read a book or whatever. And it pays dividends. So
we all think about how cool it would be to be a pro bike racer, right? I mean, it's like, oh, this seems like a interesting life. You ride your bike, you eat, you get a massage. This is your chance to do it, maybe minus the massage, but this is your chance to act just like that, right? You go ride your bike for a short ride, get something to eat, go home and hang out.
Yeah, I tell our development riders, our young riders all the time, like, actually being a pro bicyclist is actually quite boring. It looks exciting. The races are cool. The training's fun. But then outside of that, you're laying down basically the rest of the day. So, as a pro. So, but yeah, that's 2 days out. Avoid that temptation, Fatty, to get on your bike and ride. Try to avoid that as much as possible. Okay.
Oh, I hear you.
Yeah. And then the day before is when you want to get out and get that final race prep workout done that we talked about. The 1 by 1 of each of those short intervals. Do those openers. I've come to personally like to do these on the paved road where the start of the race is. So I'll ride down and do those kind of coming up. Riding in reverse of the starts, because it's a nice gradual uphill. The reason I like to do that rather than ride, like say Kevins, for example, is one, it keeps you from doing too much because you don't get too far away from town. And then it also keeps your bike clean, because if I just spent an hour or more cleaning my bike, riding on the pavement, it's going to come back basically clean still. So, that's just me, but, do that short ride. That short ride is only probably an hour, maybe even a little less than an hour, depending on how efficient you are with it. So, and then again, getting refueled after that ride. And then it's like those final last minute preparations of getting your, feed zone, stuff ready, laying out your kit that you're going to wear, all those sorts of things, making sure you've got everything you need for race day for your crew, if you have your crew, and really getting that dialed in. I mean, I spend a lot of time also kind of visualizing the course, and I've gotten pretty good, scary good in some senses, of going through and estimating my exact arrival time at the different feed zones for my crew. And I've gotten to the point where I take a, yellow notepad and I write out all the, pipeline outbound, I like the second feed zone out at Columbine. What's that called? Out, Lost Canyon.
Twin Lakes alternate. Yeah. Lost Canyon Road.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That one. And then Lost Canyon coming back, and then, inbound, each of the feed zones laid out, and to the minute I try to say, like, this is where I plan to be. And then I have my support person, my wife, Kathy, she will actually record when I actually do come through. And the last 2 times I've done it, it's been like scary accurate, which is good, I guess. But that allows you to like really visualize the course too. I'm a big fan of that mental preparation the day before. And then trying to unwind as quickly as you can because you have an early morning the next morning. So I like to eat an earlier dinner, try to unwind as early as possible, get to bed as early as possible. It's easier said than done in many cases. And knowing too that sleep probably isn't going to be great, but I'm going to try my best and be ready for that. I set my alarm for 3:30 to get up on race day and start the race day rituals. So.
Oh, you're tying my stomach up in knots.
I know, just talking about it.
Oh, it is funny. The nervousness, the excitement, all of that. Boy, I'm right there with you in terms of visualizing and the pre-race nerves. And also, I do understand that you do have to rest to really taper to have a good day on the course. So, Cody, it's so great having all of this expert advice throughout the season as we get ready for this race. Looking forward to seeing how you do at the starting line, at the finish line.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to see how you do as well, Fatty, and everyone else following our program. And yeah, I mean, the end is near here, so to speak, and it's getting exciting for sure.
Hadi, this really is one of the hardest parts of training for me. Backing off, emphasizing recovery, and, trying to push aside the anxiety that I always get thinking that I am losing fitness. So to recap, your last hard weekend under Cody's plan would be the weekend of the stage race, which is July 29th through the 31st. Then 12 days of gradually reducing effort and volume. And on the 13th day, you race.
Like I said in the interview, Fatty, I've done tapers that started with a rest week and then went into a taper. And you just have to be comfortable with the fact that, you are not getting stronger. If you were to keep training right up until a few days before race, you'd be so worn out that August 13th, you would be a mess. You would be a wreck. So it's always best just to taper.
Now, Cody is offering his 2-week taper plan. So like what we just heard, but in much greater detail, specificity, and he's offering that for free to our listeners. You can grab a copy go to leadville.fm/taper and use the code Leadville100 at checkout to get the detailed plan. Now, Cody usually sells this plan for $19, so this is an incredible deal.
And since Cody is the current cross-country Masters national champ, congrats to Cody on his victory in Winter Park earlier this month. You can safely assume this is a coach who doesn't just talk the talk. So one more time, go to leadville.fm/taper for your taper plan and use the code Leadville100 at checkout to get it for free.
It is worth mentioning that Coach Cody's segments on this program are brought to you by The Feed, which has a great program for our listeners. Even the lighter intervals Cody talked about require fueling, of course, and you can find the nutrition to do it at The Feed.
How would you like $80 to spend on any nutrition brand or product that fuels your training and racing? Right now, you can receive $80 in annual credit at The Feed.
The Feed is the largest online marketplace for athletes to shop sports nutrition, high-performance supplements, and recovery gear you need to make your workout as good as it can be.
Claim your $80 in annual credit at thefeed.com/Leadville. Register your email, verify your phone number, then spend your first Feed credit of $20 right away.
Ooh, and while you're there, go ahead and sign up for our group ride, right?
Yeah.
Duh. Mm-hmm. Double duty linkage there. Let's go ahead and wrap the episode. Hadi and I are on social media. On Twitter, I'm at Fat Cyclist. Hadi's on Instagram, at Michael Houghton. Of course, we're both on the Facebook Leadville participants page. And if you want to have something that is more like a conversation, join our Slack channel. You'll find a link to it over at leadville.fm/Slack.
And if you like the show, go to wherever you listen, give us a 5-star rating, write a review, and to see all the ways you can find the show, it is leadville.fm. For now, good luck in your riding, your tapering, and thanks for listening. We'll see you in just a few weeks at the starting line and, of course, at our group ride.
At the group ride.